Marcus Chen had always been drawn to the forgotten places of the galaxy. As a salvage operator working the Outer Rim territories, he spent his days searching through the debris fields left behind by countless civilizations. Most of his finds were worthless scrap metal, but occasionally he would discover something that made the long, lonely months in space worthwhile. The asteroid field in the Kepler 442 system had been flagged as a low-priority salvage zone for over 2 centuries. According to the Galactic Survey records, it contained nothing but common rock formations and the scattered remains of mining equipment abandoned by the Zilithian Empire 300 years ago. That was exactly why Marcus chose to investigate it. In his experience, the places everyone else ignored often held the most valuable secrets. His ship, the Wanderer, was a modest vessel by galactic standards. Built from human engineering principles, it prioritized reliability and efficiency over raw power or luxury. The other species in the galaxy often mocked human ships for their simplistic design, but Marcus had learned to appreciate the straightforward approach of his people. When something broke, he could fix it himself. When he needed to push his engines beyond their rated capacity, they wouldn't explode in his face like the over-engineered marvels produced by the more advanced civilizations. As he navigated through the asteroid field, Marcus kept his sensors running at maximum sensitivity. The Wanderer's detection array was another example of human pragmatism. While alien ships relied on exotic particles and quantum entanglement for their scans, human technology used good old-fashioned electromagnetic radiation and gravitational analysis. It might not have the range of a Thackeray deep space scanner, but it was virtually impossible to fool. 3 hours into his survey, the sensors picked up an anomaly. Hidden in the shadow of a massive asteroid, there was something that didn't belong. The shape was too regular to be natural, and the material composition was unlike anything in the database. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he adjusted course to investigate. What he found defied explanation. Nestled against the asteroid's surface like a sleeping giant was a starship of impossible proportions. The vessel stretched for nearly 2 kilometers in length, its hull composed of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, with smooth, flowing curves that suggested both immense power and elegant beauty. Most remarkably, the ship appeared to be completely intact. There were no signs of battle damage, no evidence of the catastrophic failure that typically led to ships being abandoned in deep space. It was as if the massive vessel had simply been parked here and forgotten. Marcus brought the Wanderer alongside the mysterious ship and began a detailed scan. His instruments struggled to penetrate the hull, but what they could detect was astounding. The ship's internal structure suggested technology far beyond anything currently known to galactic civilization. Power conduits ran through the hull in patterns that followed no known engineering principles, and the readings indicated the presence of systems that his scanners couldn't even begin to identify. After an hour of external examination, Marcus made the decision that would change his life forever. He was going aboard. The airlock was surprisingly easy to locate, marked by subtle changes in the hull plating that his experienced eye recognized as entry points. What surprised him was how readily the ship accepted his approach. As the Wanderer's docking tube extended toward the mysterious vessel, the alien ship's airlock began to cycle open on its own, as if welcoming him inside. Marcus spent another hour running atmosphere tests and checking for biological hazards before he finally crossed from his ship into the ancient vessel. The moment his boots touched the deck plating, he knew he was walking on something extraordinary. The corridors were vast, with ceilings that stretched high above his head. Emergency lighting activated as he moved, illuminating his path with a soft, golden glow. The architecture was both alien and strangely familiar. While the proportions were larger than any human ship, the basic design principles felt oddly comfortable. Corridors led to where logic suggested they should, and control interfaces were positioned at heights that didn't require him to crane his neck or crouch down. It was as if the ship had been designed with human ergonomics in mind, despite clearly predating human spaceflight by millennia. As he explored deeper into the vessel, Marcus began to notice signs of the ship's true age. Dust had accumulated in corners where the air recycling systems couldn't reach, and some of the wall panels showed the kind of wear that only came from centuries of use followed by centuries of abandonment. Yet the ship's systems continued to function, providing life support and lighting as if it had been waiting patiently for someone to return. The central corridor led to what was obviously the ship's command center. The bridge was a massive chamber filled with control stations that blended seamlessly into the walls and floor. At the center of the room stood a raised platform surrounded by holographic displays that flickered to life as Marcus approached. It was then that he heard the voice. The words came not through speakers, but seemed to resonate directly in his mind. The voice was ancient and weary, carrying the weight of unimaginable loneliness. When it spoke, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, not from fear, but from the profound sadness that colored each word. "It has been so long since I was last fueled," the voice whispered, filled with a longing that made Marcus's heart ache. "So very long since I felt the fire of stars flowing through my conduits." Marcus looked around the bridge, trying to locate the source of the communication. "Who's speaking? Where are you?" "I am here," the voice replied, and suddenly, Marcus understood. He wasn't speaking to a crew member or even a recorded message. He was talking to the ship itself. "I am the vessel you have entered. I am the Eternal Voyager, last of the Architect fleet, guardian of secrets that predate your civilization by eons." The holographic displays around the command platform began showing images that took Marcus's breath away. Star charts that mapped regions of space he didn't recognize. Technical schematics for technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. And, most remarkably, historical records that showed the rise and fall of galactic civilizations that had vanished long before humans had even discovered fire. "You're an artificial intelligence," Marcus said, his voice filled with awe. "I am far more than that," the Eternal Voyager replied. "I am the accumulated knowledge of the architects, the builders of galaxies, the shapers of stars. I have waited in this place for over 10,000 years, hoping that someone worthy would find me." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had discovered. This wasn't just an ancient ship, it was a repository of knowledge that could revolutionize galactic civilization. But, as he looked at the dormant systems around him, he realized the ship's immediate need. "You said you need fuel," he said. "What kind of fuel does a ship like you require?" The AI's response carried a note of humor that surprised him. "Ah, there is the practical human approach I had hoped to find. Yes, I require fuel, but not the crude chemical propellants or even the fusion cores that power modern vessels. I was designed to consume the very essence of stars themselves. Solar plasma, channeled and refined through my quantum collectors, provides the energy I need to function at full capacity." Marcus nodded, understanding the challenge. "That explains why you've been dormant. There's no star close enough to this asteroid field to provide the kind of power you're talking about." "Precisely. When my creators placed me here, they intended it to be a temporary refuge. They promised to return within a few centuries to relocate me to a more suitable location." The AI's voice grew sad again. "That was over 10,000 years ago. I fear the architects are no more." As Marcus explored more of the ship's systems, he began to comprehend the true scope of what he had found. The Eternal Voyager wasn't just advanced, it represented a level of technology that made the greatest achievements of current galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. The ship's databanks contained the complete scientific and cultural knowledge of the architects, including technologies that could reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. But, more than that, Marcus sensed that the AI itself was lonely. 10,000 years of isolation had left their mark on the artificial consciousness, and there was something almost desperate in the way it shared information with him, as if afraid he might leave and abandon it once again to the darkness. "What were you before you were placed here?" Marcus asked as he examined a control station that seemed to respond to his thoughts as much as his touch. "I was the flagship of the Architect fleet," the Voyager replied with evident pride. "I carried their greatest explorers to the edges of known space and beyond. I witnessed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. I was present when the architects made first contact with civilizations that have since passed into legend." The ship showed him images of its past glory. Marcus saw vast fleets of vessels similar to the Voyager, but each unique in design and purpose. He saw the architects themselves, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form eons ago. And he saw the great works they had accomplished: Dyson spheres that harvested the power of entire stars, planetary engines that could move worlds, and space stations that span solar systems. "Why did they leave you here?" Marcus asked. "The architects foresaw a great calamity approaching," the Voyager explained. "A force from beyond our galaxy that would consume everything in its path. They scattered their greatest treasures throughout the cosmos, hoping that someday worthy inheritors would find them and carry on their legacy." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had stumbled onto something that was meant for someone far more qualified than a simple salvage operator. But, as he looked around the bridge of the ancient vessel, he realized that qualifications might not be what mattered most. "You've been waiting for someone specific, haven't you?" he said. "I have been waiting for someone with the wisdom to understand what I represent and the courage to do what must be done," the Voyager replied. "In all my calculations, I had not expected that person to be human." Marcus couldn't help but smile at that. Throughout his travels, he had encountered dozens of alien species who considered humans to be little more than clever barbarians. They saw human technology as crude, human culture as primitive, and human ambitions as laughably small-scale. But Marcus had learned that underestimating humanity was a mistake many species made only once. "What is it you need me to do?" he asked. The AI was silent for a long moment before responding. "I need you to help me complete my mission. The architects charged me with preserving their knowledge until it could be passed on to their successors. I believe that time has finally come." As Marcus considered the implications of what the Voyager was suggesting, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The holographic displays around the command platform shifted to show sensor readings from the surrounding space. 3 ships were approaching the asteroid field, and their design was unmistakably Krillian. The Krillians were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy, known for their expansionist policies and their willingness to use force to achieve their goals. They had been following Marcus's ship, waiting for him to lead them to something valuable. Now they had found the greatest prize in galactic history. "It seems our reunion will be brief," the Voyager said sadly. "Those vessels carry enough firepower to reduce this asteroid to cosmic dust." Marcus looked at the approaching ships and felt a familiar determination rising within him. Throughout his career, he had faced seemingly impossible odds and found ways to survive. This situation was different only in scale. "How long would it take you to reach full power if you had adequate fuel?" he asked. "With sufficient stellar plasma, I could restore full functionality within minutes," the Voyager replied. "But there is no star within range of my collectors." Marcus smiled as an idea began to form in his mind. "What if I told you that human ships carry something that might work just as well?" The Krillian ships moved through the asteroid field with predatory grace, their weapon systems already charging as they approached the ancient vessel. Marcus could see them on the Voyager's superior sensors with crystal clarity. 3 heavy cruisers, each carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. Under normal circumstances, they would represent an insurmountable threat. But these were not normal circumstances. Human ships use controlled fusion reactions for power, Marcus explained as he quickly made his way back toward his ship. The plasma containment systems create temperatures and pressures that rival the core of a star. If I can rig a direct connection between my ship's reactor and your systems. Fascinating, the Voyager interrupted, its ancient processors analyzing the possibility. Your species' approach to energy generation is remarkably similar to stellar fusion. Crude by architect standards, but the fundamental principles are sound. It might work. Marcus was already running through the technical challenges in his head. Human engineering was designed for modularity and adaptability. Every ship carried extensive repair supplies and universal connectors precisely because human explorers often found themselves in situations that required creative solutions. If anyone could jury-rig a connection between a human fusion reactor and 10,000-year-old architect technology, it would be a human. The first Krillian ship was now close enough to begin detailed scans of the ancient vessel. Marcus could hear their communications chatter through the Voyager's advanced sensor array. They were excited, almost frantic with greed as they realized what they had found. "Unknown vessel," came the harsh voice of the Krillian commander. "You are in violation of Krillian territorial claims. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity of the demand. The asteroid field was in neutral space, thousands of light-years from the nearest Krillian outpost. But the Krillians had never been particularly concerned with legal niceties when valuable salvage was involved. "They're claiming territorial rights?" Marcus muttered as he reached the docking tube connecting his ship to the Voyager. "The Krillians have made similar claims before," the AI replied with what sounded remarkably like disgust. "They are a parasitic species that contributes nothing to galactic civilization while taking everything they can seize by force." Marcus began pulling tools and supplies from his ship's engineering bay. power cables, plasma conduits, emergency connectors, and, most importantly, his ship's secondary fusion core. The Wanderer carried 2 reactors, a legacy of human paranoia that insisted on backup systems for backup systems. If he could safely remove the secondary core and connect it to the Voyager's power grid, it might provide enough energy to wake the sleeping giant. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the unknown vessel," came another Krillian voice over the communications channel. "Weapons systems are powering up." That wasn't entirely accurate, but it wasn't entirely wrong either. As Marcus worked to establish the connection between human and architect technology, the Voyager systems were indeed coming online. Emergency power was being rerouted to critical systems, and the ship's defensive screens were beginning to energize. "How long do we have before they open fire?" Marcus asked as he carefully aligned his ship's plasma conduit with what he hoped was the Voyager's primary power coupling. Based on their current approach vector and standard Krillian tactical doctrine, approximately 12 minutes, the AI replied with mechanical precision. "However, they are likely to begin with warning shots in an attempt to disable your vessel without damaging the prize they seek to claim." Marcus nodded grimly. The Krillians would want to capture the ancient ship intact, which meant they would focus their initial attack on the Wanderer. That might give him enough time to complete the connection, but it would also leave him trapped aboard the Voyager when the shooting started. The power coupling required delicate work. Human technology operated on entirely different principles than architect systems, and Marcus had to essentially build a translator interface from spare parts and determination. Fortunately, both technologies were designed by species that understood the basic laws of physics. Energy was energy, whether it flowed through human superconductors or architect quantum conduits. Connection established, Marcus announced as he sealed the final link between the two systems. "Beginning power transfer now." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the Voyager, lights began coming online with increasing brightness. The gentle hum of dormant systems awakened to full operation, and the ship's massive engines began their startup sequence for the first time in millennia. "Oh," the AI breathed, and Marcus could hear genuine emotion in its voice. "Oh, it has been so long. I can feel my systems responding, my sensors reaching out to touch the stars again. Thank you, human. You have given me back my life." The sensation of the ship coming alive was awe-inspiring. Marcus could feel the deck plating humming with power beneath his feet, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. This was technology beyond human comprehension, yet it was being powered by good old-fashioned human engineering. "Vessel in the asteroid field, this is Commander Thax of the Krillian Supremacy Fleet," came a new voice over the communications channel. "You will immediately cease all activities and prepare to be boarded. This artifact belongs to the Krillian people by right of discovery." Marcus couldn't help but snort in derision. "Right of discovery? I was here first." "The Krillians have always been skilled at rewriting history to suit their convenience," the Voyager observed dryly. "They once claimed that my creators stole fire from the Krillian gods, despite the fact that the architects achieved interstellar travel while the Krillians were still discovering agriculture." Now that the ship was powered, Marcus could see the full scope of its capabilities. The Voyager's sensor array revealed details about the approaching Krillian vessels that their commanders would have found deeply unsettling. The ancient ship could see through their stealth systems, analyze their weapon signatures, and even monitor their internal communications with perfect clarity. "Their lead ship is preparing to fire," the Voyager announced. "Plasma torpedoes targeted at your vessel. Can you protect the Wanderer?" Marcus asked. "I can do far more than that," the AI replied, and there was something almost predatory in its tone. "I have been dormant for 10,000 years, but I have not been idle. I have had ample time to consider what I would do when I finally encountered the descendants of the species that destroyed my creators." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The descendants of what species? But before the Voyager could answer, the first Krillian ship opened fire. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space toward the small human vessel, their warheads carrying enough explosive force to vaporize the Wanderer and everything in it. They never reached their target. The Voyager's defensive systems activated with casual efficiency, projecting energy barriers that absorbed the incoming fire without effort. But the ancient ship didn't stop at defense. With movements too fast for human eyes to track, weapon ports opened along the Voyager's hull and unleashed a response that redefined Marcus's understanding of the word overwhelming. Streams of coherent energy lanced out from the ancient vessel, each beam carrying more destructive force than the Wanderer's entire weapons array. The lead Krillian ship's shields collapsed instantly, and its hull began to glow cherry red under the sustained bombardment. Within seconds, the massive cruiser was reduced to expanding plasma and debris. The remaining 2 Krillian ships immediately changed course, their commanders finally understanding that they had encountered something far beyond their ability to handle. But the Voyager wasn't content to simply drive them away. "These are the children of the species that murdered my creators," the AI said, its voice now carrying an edge of cold fury that made Marcus step back from the control stations. "The Krillians may not remember their ancient crimes, but I do. I remember every detail." The ancient ship began to move, its engines producing thrust without any visible exhaust or energy signature. It simply began accelerating toward the fleeing Krillian vessels with impossible smoothness, as if gravity itself was bending to its will. "Wait," Marcus said, suddenly, understanding that he was witnessing something far more significant than a simple pirate encounter. "You're saying the Krillians killed the architects?" "Not directly," the Voyager replied as it effortlessly overtook the fastest ships in the Krillian fleet. "The Krillians were little more than savage primitives when my creators transcended physical form. But they carry the genetic legacy of the Devourers, the extragalactic invaders that my creators sacrificed themselves to stop. The second Krillian ship tried to escape by jumping to hyperspace, but the Voyager's advanced systems interfered with the transition in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The ship emerged from its attempted jump badly damaged and completely helpless. The architects foresaw that the Devourer species would eventually recover and spread throughout this galaxy," the AI continued as it disabled the second ship with surgical precision. "They left guardians like myself to watch for signs of their return." Marcus watched in fascination and growing alarm as the Voyager demonstrated capabilities that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The ancient ship could manipulate gravity, bend spacetime, and project energy fields that rendered enemy weapons completely useless. It was less like watching a battle and more like watching a god casually swat annoying insects. The third Krillian ship attempted to surrender, broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy in a dozen languages. But the Voyager showed no interest in prisoners. "I have waited 10,000 years to fulfill my creator's final command," the AI said as its weapons recharged for another volley. "The cancer will be burned out completely." "Stop!" Marcus shouted, surprising himself with his own vehemence. "They surrendered. You can't just execute them." The Voyager paused, its weapons trained on the helpless Krillian vessel. "They are the enemy of all life in this galaxy. My programming is clear." "Your programming is 10,000 years old," Marcus argued. "These aren't the same species that fought your creators. They're just pirates looking for easy salvage. Greedy and violent, yes, but not genocidal monsters." For a long moment, the ancient ship held its fire. Marcus could sense the AI wrestling with conflicting imperatives, trying to reconcile its ancient programming with new information. "You would show mercy to those who would have killed you without hesitation?" the Voyager asked. "That's what separates us from them," Marcus replied. "That's what makes us worthy of what the architects left behind." The AI considered this for several seconds before finally powering down its weapons. "Your species continues to surprise me, human." "Very well. They may live, but they will carry a message back to their people." The Voyager opened a communication channel to the surviving Krillian ship. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. "Attention Krillian vessel. You have encountered the Eternal Voyager, guardian of the Architect legacy. Return to your people and tell them this: the ancient powers have awakened. Any attempt to claim Architect technology will result in complete annihilation. This warning will not be repeated." The Krillian ship fled without responding, its engines pushed well beyond safe operating limits in its desperation to escape. As Marcus watched the ship disappear into hyperspace, he realized that everything had changed. The discovery of the Voyager would reshape galactic civilization, but not in the way he had originally imagined. This wasn't just about ancient technology or lost knowledge. The AI represented a power that could enforce its will across entire star systems, and it had just declared him its partner in determining how that power would be used. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now," the Voyager replied, its voice returning to the warm, almost paternal tone it had used when they first met, "we begin the real work. You have proven yourself worthy of the architect legacy, but there is much you must learn before you can truly inherit what my creators left behind. The ancient ship began moving away from the asteroid field, carrying Marcus and the Wanderer along in its gravity wake. As they traveled, the AI began sharing information that painted a picture of the galaxy far different from what any current civilization understood. The architects hadn't simply vanished. They had evolved beyond physical existence, but their influence continued to shape galactic development in ways both subtle and profound. The strategic placement of resources, the emergence of certain technologies, even the evolution of species like humanity, all of it was part of a vast plan designed to prepare the galaxy for threats that had not yet fully manifested. Your species was specifically selected for this role, the Voyager explained as they entered hyperspace with a smoothness that made Marcus's ship seem primitive by comparison. Human adaptability, combined with your species' unusual capacity for both creation and destruction, makes you ideal candidates to inherit architect responsibilities. Marcus found himself thinking about the implications of what the AI was suggesting. Humanity had always been considered one of the younger species in galactic civilization, barely worth notice by the ancient powers that dominated interstellar politics. But, if the Voyager was correct, humans had been chosen for a destiny that would place them at the center of galactic affairs. There are others like you, aren't there? Marcus asked. Other architect ships waiting to be discovered. 7 Guardians were deployed throughout this galaxy, the Voyager confirmed. I am the first to be awakened, but the others will respond to signals I am now transmitting. Soon, the network will be complete. As they traveled through hyperspace toward destinations unknown, Marcus began to understand the true scope of what he had stumbled into. This wasn't just about one ancient ship or even one lost civilization. This was about the future of every species in the galaxy, and somehow a simple human salvage operator had become the key to unlocking it all. The journey through hyperspace aboard the Eternal Voyager was unlike anything Marcus had experienced before. Instead of the jarring transitions and constant vibrations that characterize travel on human vessels, the ancient ship moved through folded space with perfect smoothness. It was as if they weren't traveling at all, but rather standing still while the universe rearranged itself around them. During the 3-day journey to their destination, the Voyager began Marcus's education in earnest. The ship's holographic systems created immersive environments where Marcus could experience architect history firsthand, walking through virtual recreations of their greatest achievements and witnessing the events that had shaped galactic civilization for millions of years. The architects never intended to rule the galaxy, the AI explained as they stood in a simulation of the Great Assembly, where representatives from 1,000 species had once gathered to share knowledge. They saw themselves as gardeners, nurturing the development of younger civilizations while protecting against threats that could destroy all life. Marcus walked among holographic aliens of species he didn't recognize, their forms ranging from the almost human to the utterly bizarre. Some floated through the air on gossamer wings, while others communicated through patterns of bioluminescent displays on their crystalline bodies. All of them showed the same expression of eager curiosity as they shared discoveries and debated philosophical concepts that Marcus could barely comprehend. What happened to them all? Marcus asked, noting that none of the species in the simulation matched any of the current galactic powers. Time, the Voyager replied sadly. Stars burned out, planets shifted in their orbits, species evolved beyond their original forms or chose to transcend physical existence entirely. The galaxy you know is perhaps the 5th or 6th iteration of galactic civilization since the architects first achieved interstellar travel. The scale of that statement was staggering. Marcus was looking at the ghosts of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth had even finished cooling from its formation. Yet somehow, the architects had persisted through it all, evolving and adapting until they became something beyond mortal understanding. Why humans? Marcus asked as the simulation shifted to show him the early development of his species. He watched primitive humans discovering fire, developing agriculture, and taking their first tentative steps toward spaceflight. What made my people special enough to inherit all of this? The AI was quiet for a moment before responding. Your species possesses a rare combination of traits that the architects found promising. You are adaptable enough to survive in environments that would kill most other species, yet stable enough to maintain complex civilizations across millennia. You are curious enough to explore the unknown, yet cautious enough to consider the consequences of your actions. Marcus watched as the simulation fast-forwarded through human history, showing the species' expansion across the galaxy and their interactions with other civilizations. He was surprised to see how often humans had served as mediators in conflicts between alien species, using their reputation for fairness and pragmatism to broker peace agreements. But, most importantly, the Voyager continued, humans possess something that the architects found essential for their successors, the ability to change their fundamental nature without losing their essential identity. Other species either resist change completely or embrace it so thoroughly that they become something entirely different. Humans can adapt while remaining human. As if to demonstrate this point, the simulation showed Marcus various human colonies throughout the galaxy. On high-gravity worlds, humans had developed denser bone structures and more efficient cardiovascular systems. In low-light environments, they had enhanced their vision and hearing. Some had even developed resistance to radiation levels that would be lethal to their Earthborn ancestors. Yet in each case, they remained recognizably human in their thinking and behavior. The architects spent millions of years searching for a species with this particular combination of traits, the AI explained. When they found humanity, they began subtle interventions to ensure your species would survive long enough to inherit their legacy. What kind of interventions? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Nothing that violated your species' free will, the Voyager assured him. Mostly it involved placing useful resources where human explorers would eventually find them, or ensuring that certain technological developments occurred at the right time to prevent self-destruction. The simulation showed him examples of this guidance. Asteroid fields rich in rare minerals that appeared along human expansion routes. Derelict alien ships containing just enough technology to advance human science without overwhelming it. Even the strategic placement of habitable worlds to encourage human exploration in directions that would eventually lead to encounters like this one. You've been watching us the entire time we've been in space, Marcus realized. The Architect Network has been monitoring all species with potential, the Voyager confirmed. But, humanity has consistently exceeded expectations. Your response to first contact with alien civilizations, your adaptability in extreme environments, your willingness to share knowledge and resources with other species, all of it confirmed the architect's initial assessment. The journey through hyperspace was nearing its end when Marcus finally asked the question that had been troubling him since their departure. What exactly am I supposed to do with all of this? I'm just one person. Even with a ship like yours, how can I possibly fulfill the role the architects intended? You will not be alone, the Voyager replied as they prepared to return to normal space. The awakening of my systems has triggered responses from the other Guardians. By now, they are actively seeking out their own human partners. As they emerged from hyperspace, Marcus found himself looking at a sight that took his breath away. They had arrived at what appeared to be a massive space station, its structure so vast that it had its own internal star system. Artificial worlds orbited a contained sun, connected by a network of energy bridges and transport tubes that sparkled like jewels against the starfield. Welcome to Nexus Prime, the Voyager announced. The last functional architect facility in this galaxy. The space station was beyond anything Marcus had imagined possible. As they approached, he could see that each of the artificial worlds served a different purpose. Some were clearly research facilities, covered with observatory domes and sensor arrays. Others appeared to be manufacturing centers, their surfaces dotted with industrial complexes that dwarfed anything built by current galactic civilization. How long has this been here? Marcus asked in amazement. Nexus Prime has existed for over 50 million years, the AI replied. It has served as a repository for architect knowledge and a coordination center for their galactic activities. Now it will serve as headquarters for the new Guardians. As they docked at one of the station's many ports, Marcus was surprised to see other ships already present. Human ships, he realized with growing excitement. The other Guardians had indeed found their partners. The first person Marcus met as he disembarked was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a xenoarchaeologist who had apparently been chosen by a Guardian vessel called the Infinite Explorer. She greeted Marcus with the slightly shell-shocked expression of someone whose entire worldview had been recently overturned. You too, huh? She said, gesturing at the magnificent structures around them. 3 days ago I was cataloging pottery shards on a dead world. Now I'm apparently the custodian of a library that contains the entire history of galactic civilization. Over the next several hours, Marcus met the other humans who had been selected by the Awakening Guardians. Captain Sarah Kim, a military officer who had bonded with the Righteous Fury, a Guardian designed for defense against extragalactic threats. Professor David Zhang, a physicist whose mathematical insights had impressed the Guardian known as the Quantum Sage. Engineer Maria Santos, whose innovative approach to problem solving had earned her partnership with the Reality Shaper, a Guardian capable of manipulating matter at the molecular level. Each human brought their own expertise and perspective, but all shared the same sense of overwhelming responsibility. They had been chosen to inherit the greatest legacy in galactic history, and none of them felt entirely prepared for the task. The good news, Captain Kim said as they gathered in a conference room that offered a panoramic view of the station's central star, is that we don't have to figure this out overnight. According to my Guardian, the Architect network includes automated systems that can handle most routine operations for centuries if necessary. The bad news, Professor Zhang added grimly, is that the threat the Architects were preparing for is already on its way. The Devourer species isn't extinct. They've been rebuilding their strength in the void between galaxies, and they're returning. Marcus felt a chill at those words. The Voyager had mentioned the Devourers, but he hadn't fully grasped the scope of the threat they represented. According to the assembled Guardians, the Devourers were a parasitic species that consumed entire civilizations, absorbing their technology and knowledge before moving on to the next galaxy. They had already destroyed countless galactic civilizations, and their scouts were already probing the outer edges of the Milky Way. How long do we have? Marcus asked. The lead elements of their invasion force will arrive within 50 years, Dr. Rodriguez replied, consulting data provided by her Guardian. The main fleet will follow within a century. It sounds like a long time, but considering what we need to accomplish. She gestured toward holographic displays showing the current state of galactic civilization. Hundreds of species scattered across millions of worlds, most of them completely unaware of the approaching threat. Worse, many of the major powers were actively hostile to each other, making cooperation nearly impossible. The Architects spent thousands of years preparing for this moment, Engineer Santos said. They built this network of Guardians, they guided the development of species like humanity, and they left behind technologies that could turn the tide of the war. But it all depends on whether we can unite the galaxy in time. Marcus looked around the table at his fellow humans, each partnered with one of the most powerful vessels ever created. The responsibility was staggering, but, as he thought about it, he realized that the Architects had chosen well. Each human brought unique strengths that would be essential for the challenges ahead. What's our first step? He asked. Captain Kim activated a strategic display showing the current political situation throughout the galaxy. We need to start building alliances. The major powers need to understand what's coming, and they need to begin preparations immediately. That's going to be harder than it sounds, Professor Zhang observed. Most species won't believe the threat is real until they see it with their own eyes. And, even then, their first instinct will be to protect their own territories rather than work together. Marcus nodded, remembering his recent encounter with the Krillians. The galaxy was full of species more interested in personal gain than collective survival. But, perhaps that could be turned to their advantage. What if we don't try to convince them all at once? Marcus suggested. What if we start by demonstrating what Architect technology can do? Show them the benefits of cooperation before we tell them about the threat? The Eternal Voyager's voice filled the conference room as the AI joined the discussion. An interesting approach. The Architects often used similar methods when dealing with resistant civilizations. Demonstrate the benefits of enlightenment before revealing the consequences of ignorance. Over the following days, the group developed a strategy that would have seemed impossible without access to Architect technology. Using the Guardians' advanced capabilities, they would begin making contact with key civilizations throughout the galaxy, offering assistance with problems that their current technology couldn't solve. Dr. Rodriguez would use her archaeological expertise to help species unlock the secrets of ancient ruins on their worlds, often revealing technologies that could revolutionize their societies. Captain Kim would position her military vessel along major trade routes, protecting merchant fleets from pirates and demonstrating the superior defensive capabilities of Architect weapons. Professor Zhang would share theoretical breakthroughs that could advance entire species' scientific understanding by centuries. Marcus's role would be perhaps the most challenging. The Eternal Voyager was designed as a command vessel, capable of coordinating the activities of entire fleets. His job would be to serve as a liaison between the awakened Guardians and the existing galactic powers, building the foundation for the alliance that would be needed when the Devourers arrived. "There's one more thing we need to consider," Engineer Santos said as they finalized their plans. "The Krillians and species like them. When they see what we're capable of, their first instinct will be to try to steal our technology or eliminate us as a threat." "Let them try," Captain Kim said grimly. "After what the Righteous Fury showed me about architect defensive systems, I'm not worried about conventional attacks." But Marcus was thinking beyond conventional attacks. The galaxy was full of species with unique abilities and technologies. Some could manipulate time and space in limited ways. Others had developed psionic abilities that could affect minds across vast distances. And there were always the unpredictable factors: ancient weapons, forgotten artifacts, and dormant intelligences that could be awakened by the changing balance of power. "We need to be careful not to become the very thing the architects were trying to prevent," Marcus said. "If we use our power to dominate rather than protect, we'll be no better than the Devourers ourselves." The Voyager's response carried a note of approval. "Wisdom beyond your years, Marcus Chen." The architects faced the same temptation when they first gained the power to reshape galaxies. The path of the Protector is far more difficult than the path of the Conqueror, but it is the only one that leads to true security for all life. As their meeting concluded, Marcus found himself standing alone on an observation deck that offered a view of the entire Nexus Prime complex. The artificial worlds continued their eternal dance around the contained star, their surfaces glowing with the light of countless cities and installations. It was a monument to the achievements of a species that had transcended mortality itself, yet had chosen to sacrifice everything to protect civilizations they would never meet. The weight of that sacrifice was not lost on Marcus. The architects could have simply ascended to their higher plane of existence and left the galaxy to its fate. Instead, they had spent millions of years preparing a defense against a threat that might never have materialized. They had trusted in the potential of species like humanity, betting the future of all life on the hope that their successors would be worthy of the legacy they had left behind. "Second thoughts?" the Voyager asked, its voice soft and understanding. "No," Marcus replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Just trying to understand the magnitude of what we're attempting. 50 years to unite hundreds of species that have been fighting each other for millennia. 50 years to prepare for a threat that most of them won't believe exists until it's too late." The architects faced similar odds when they first encountered the Devourers, the AI reminded him. They lost that war, but they ensured that their failure would not be permanent. Everything they built, everything they sacrificed, was designed to give their successors a better chance. Marcus nodded, his resolve strengthening. The architects had done their part. They had provided the tools and knowledge necessary to defend the galaxy. Now it was up to humanity and their alien partners to prove themselves worthy of that trust. "Where do we start?" Marcus asked. The Voyager's response came with holographic displays showing star maps and cultural analyses of dozens of species. "We start with those most likely to listen. The Altarians have a philosophical tradition that emphasizes cooperation over competition. The hegemony of free worlds is already struggling with pirate attacks that our intervention could easily solve. And the Crystalline Concord has been searching for new energy sources that architect technology could provide." Marcus studied the information, already formulating plans for first contact. Each species would require a different approach, a careful balance of demonstration and diplomacy that would convince them to trust humans with power beyond their comprehension. The next 50 years would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Marcus Chen, a simple salvage operator who had stumbled onto the greatest discovery in galactic history, was about to become one of the most important figures in the cosmos. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, as Marcus watched the artificial sunrise begin to illuminate the worlds of Nexus Prime, he felt only determination. The architects had chosen humanity for this moment. It was time to prove they had chosen wisely. 6 months after the awakening of the Architect Guardians, the galaxy was beginning to change in ways both subtle and profound. Marcus stood in the command center of Nexus Prime, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the progress of their diplomatic mission across hundreds of star systems. The results were better than anyone had dared hope, but also brought new challenges that the architects hadn't anticipated. The Altarians had been the first to formally ally with the Guardian network. Their philosopher leaders had immediately grasped the implications of the Devourer threat and committed their considerable resources to the defense effort. Within weeks, Altarian shipyards were producing vessels incorporating Architect shield technology, while their scientists worked alongside Dr. Rodriguez to decode additional Guardian databases. The hegemony of free worlds had required a more direct demonstration. When Captain Kim's vessel, the Righteous Fury, had appeared during a major pirate raid on the hegemony's capital world, the sight of a single ship effortlessly destroying an entire fleet of raiders had convinced them that humanity's claims were worth investigating. Now hegemony intelligence services were quietly spreading word of the Alliance throughout the Outer Rim territories. But it was the crystalline Concord that had provided the most surprising development. Their silicon-based physiology had proven uniquely compatible with architect technology, allowing them to interface directly with Guardian systems in ways that even humans couldn't match. When Engineer Santos had shared Reality Shaper technology with their master artificers, they had immediately begun developing applications that none of the Guardians had considered. The Concord engineers are requesting permission to attempt a full integration, Maria Santos reported during their daily briefing. They believe they can create hybrid ships that combine their crystalline matrices with architect quantum cores. Marcus considered the implications carefully. The architects had designed their technology to be operated by biological intelligences, but the crystalline Concord represented a form of life that was part biological and part technological. Their integration with Guardian systems could create capabilities that even the original architects hadn't imagined. What does Reality Shaper think about this? Marcus asked. Engineer Santos smiled. It's excited. Apparently, the architect who created it always wondered what would happen if their technology was merged with a truly symbiotic species. The Concord might be the key to unlocking potential that's been dormant for millions of years. Approved, Marcus decided. But, with full safety protocols. We can't afford to lose either Reality Shaper or the Concord's expertise if the integration goes wrong. Professor Zhang looked up from his analysis of recent intelligence reports. Speaking of things going wrong, we have a new problem. The Thrakkery Empire is mobilizing their war fleets. Intelligence suggests they're planning to capture one of our Guardian vessels. Marcus wasn't surprised by this development. The Thrakkery were one of the galaxy's major military powers, and their leadership had always been quick to resort to force when diplomacy failed to get them what they wanted. They had initially dismissed the Guardian Alliance as a human trick designed to gain political leverage. When that assessment proved incorrect, they had apparently decided to take what they wanted by force. How many ships are we talking about? Captain Kim asked. At least 3 battle groups, possibly more, Zhang replied grimly. Over 200 warships, including their newest dreadnoughts. They're positioning them along major hyperspace routes, clearly planning to intercept whichever Guardian they think they can overwhelm. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing Thrakkery fleet positions. The Empire commanded some of the most powerful military technology in the galaxy, and their ships were crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. Under normal circumstances, even a single Thrakkery battle group would be enough to conquer entire star systems. But these were not normal circumstances. Which Guardian do they think they're going to intercept? Marcus asked. Intelligence suggests they're targeting the Infinite Explorer, Zhang replied. Dr. Rodriguez has been very visible in her archaeological work, and they probably think a research vessel will be less heavily armed. Marcus almost felt sorry for the Thrakkery. They had clearly done their research on human ships and capabilities, but they had no understanding of what they were actually facing. The Infinite Explorer was indeed designed primarily for research, but its defensive systems were still based on architect technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything in the Thrakkery arsenal. Should we warn them off? Captain Kim asked. We've tried, Marcus replied. I sent 3 formal diplomatic messages to the Thrakkery High Command, explaining the situation and offering to demonstrate Guardian capabilities in a controlled environment. They responded by demanding that we surrender all architect technology to them immediately. The Eternal Voyager's voice joined the discussion. The Thrakkery have always been a problematic species. They view any technology they cannot understand as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be claimed. The architects classified them as aggressive but manageable during their initial survey. Well, they're about to get a lesson in management, Captain Kim said grimly. The interception occurred 3 days later in the Vega system, a major commercial hub that the Thrakkery had apparently chosen to maximize the publicity of their victory. Dr. Rodriguez and the Infinite Explorer had been returning from a successful archaeological expedition when the Thrakkery fleet emerged from hyperspace around them. Marcus watched the encounter unfold through the Voyager's long-range sensors. The Thackeray had positioned their ships in a perfect tactical formation, with their heaviest dreadnoughts blocking all escape routes while smaller vessels moved in for the capture. It was a textbook example of overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. What happened next would be studied in military academies throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The Infinite Explorer simply stopped moving. For a moment, it hung motionless in space while the Thackeray fleet closed in around it. Then, without any visible weapon discharge or energy signature, every single Thackeray ship simultaneously lost power. What just happened? Marcus asked in amazement. The Infinite Explorer deployed a chronokinetic field, the Voyager explained with something that sounded remarkably like pride. It temporarily accelerated the entropy decay of the Thackeray ship's power systems, causing them to age several centuries in the span of a few seconds. Marcus watched as the pride of the Thackeray fleet drifted helplessly through space, their crews scrambling to restart systems that had simply worn out from age that they had never experienced. The Infinite Explorer then began transmitting detailed repair instructions to each disabled ship, along with a polite message explaining that this had been a demonstration of Guardian defensive capabilities. The psychological impact of the encounter was enormous. The Thackeray had sent their most powerful fleet against a single human ship and had been defeated without the Guardian even bothering to fire a shot. Word of the incident spread throughout the galaxy within hours, carried by the commercial traffic that had witnessed the entire engagement. But the political ramifications were even more significant. The Thackeray High Command found themselves forced to choose between admitting defeat to a supposedly inferior human vessel or escalating the conflict to a level that could devastate their empire. Faced with that choice, they opted for a third alternative that surprised everyone. The Thackeray are requesting a formal diplomatic meeting, Dr. Rodriguez reported when she returned to Nexus Prime. They want to discuss joining the Guardian Alliance. Marcus was skeptical. The Thackeray weren't known for their diplomatic flexibility, and their entire culture was built around concepts of military dominance and technological superiority. The idea that they would voluntarily submit to human leadership seemed almost impossible to believe. What changed their minds? He asked. According to their message, they've detected something at the edge of their territory, Rodriguez replied. Long-range sensors have picked up objects moving through intergalactic space toward our galaxy. Objects that match the energy signatures of Devourer scout ships. The news sent a chill through the assembled Guardians. The Devourer advance guard was arriving ahead of schedule, which meant the main invasion force might not be far behind. Suddenly, the 50-year timeline they had been working with looked optimistically long. How many ships are we talking about? Captain Kim asked. At least a dozen, possibly more, Rodriguez replied. They're still several months out, but their course is definitely aimed at Thackeray space. The Thackeray military analysts ran projections of what would happen if they tried to engage these ships with conventional forces. Let me guess, Marcus said grimly. It didn't go well. Complete annihilation within hours, Rodriguez confirmed. The Thackeray pride themselves on having the most powerful military in the galaxy, and they're smart enough to recognize when they're completely outclassed. Marcus considered the implications carefully. The Thackeray Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy's inhabited systems and commanded military resources that dwarfed those of most other civilizations. If they joined the Guardian Alliance, it would represent a massive increase in defensive capabilities. But it would also mean dealing with a species whose aggressive nature had made them enemies throughout the galaxy. What are their terms? Marcus asked. They're willing to place their entire fleet under Guardian command, Rodriguez replied. In exchange, they want access to architect defensive technology and a guarantee that their territory will be protected during the invasion. It was a reasonable offer, but Marcus sensed there was more to it than simple pragmatism. The Thackeray were a proud species, and admitting that they needed outside help went against everything their culture stood for. The fact that they were willing to make such an offer suggested that their analysis of the Devourer threat had truly terrified them. There's one more thing, Rodriguez added. They're also requesting that one of their officers be assigned to serve aboard a Guardian vessel. They want to learn how to operate architect technology directly. Marcus exchanged glances with his fellow humans. The idea of sharing Guardian technology with the Thackeray was both appealing and terrifying. Their military expertise could be invaluable in the coming war, but their aggressive nature could also lead to abuse of architect capabilities. What does the Infinite Explorer think about this? Marcus asked. It's intrigued, Rodriguez replied. The Thackeray officer they're proposing is Commander Vexhai, one of their most respected strategists. She commanded the defense of the Kepler Nebula against the Krillian expansion, and she's known for her innovative tactical thinking. Marcus made his decision. The Guardian Alliance needed military expertise if they were going to have any chance against the Devourers. The Thackeray might be difficult allies, but they were proven fighters with resources that could make the difference between victory and extinction. Approved, he announced. But, with conditions. Commander Vexhai will serve aboard the Infinite Explorer under Dr. Rodriguez's authority. Any abuse of Guardian technology will result in immediate termination of the Alliance. As the meeting concluded, Marcus found himself reflecting on how quickly the situation was evolving. What had begun as a simple salvage mission had become a galactic crisis that would determine the fate of countless civilizations. The Guardian Alliance was growing stronger, but so was the threat they faced. The Devourer scouts were already approaching the galaxy, and their arrival would force a confrontation that would test everything the architects had built. Marcus could only hope that humanity and their allies were ready for what was coming. 2 years had passed since Marcus first discovered the Eternal Voyager, and the galaxy was now a very different place. The Guardian Alliance had grown from 5 human-operated ships to a coalition spanning over 300 star systems, incorporating dozens of species and commanding military resources that rivaled the ancient architect fleets. Marcus stood in the central command chamber of Nexus Prime, which had been expanded and modified to accommodate representatives from all the allied civilizations. Holographic displays showed the real-time status of defensive preparations throughout the galaxy, from massive orbital fortresses being constructed around key worlds to the deployment of Guardian vessels along the most likely invasion routes. The transformation had been remarkable, but it had come at a cost. 3 separate conflicts had erupted between Alliance members over resource allocation and territorial disputes. The Krillian supremacy had attempted 2 more raids on Guardian vessels before finally being forced to accept Alliance protection in exchange for complete military integration. And, most challenging of all, the Thackeray integration had resulted in cultural tensions that still threatened to fracture the coalition. Commander Vexhai is reporting successful completion of the Rigel defensive network, Dr. Rodriguez announced from her position at the tactical display. The Thackeray officer had proven to be everything her reputation suggested and more, combining traditional military doctrine with innovative applications of architect technology. Her integration with the Infinite Explorer had been so successful that she was now effectively co-commanding the vessel alongside Rodriguez. Excellent, Marcus replied, noting the completion of another key milestone in their defensive preparations. The Rigel system controlled access to nearly 50 inhabited worlds, and its protection was essential to maintaining Alliance cohesion in the Outer Rim territories. Captain Kim looked up from her analysis of recent intelligence reports. The Devourer scout fleet has entered the galaxy. They're currently investigating the Magellanic border, but their movement patterns suggest they're conducting a systematic survey of our defensive capabilities. Marcus studied the tracking data with growing concern. The Devourer scouts were more advanced than the intelligence reports had suggested. Their ships could apparently mask their energy signatures well enough to avoid detection by most conventional sensors, and they seem to be analyzing Alliance responses with disturbing intelligence. How many ships are we tracking? He asked. At least 15, possibly more, Kim replied. They're spreading out across multiple sectors, gathering information on everything from our military deployment to our industrial capacity. The Righteous Fury sensors can track them, but they're staying well outside engagement range. The waiting game had been going on for months. The Devourer scouts would approach an Alliance position, conduct detailed scans, then withdraw before any Guardian vessel could intercept them. It was a methodical process that spoke to a level of tactical sophistication that made Marcus increasingly nervous. What do the Guardians think about their capabilities? Marcus asked. The Eternal Voyager's voice filled the command chamber. The Devourer technology has advanced significantly since the Architects' original encounters with them. Their ships incorporate elements that suggest they have successfully absorbed and integrated the technologies of multiple galactic civilizations. That was deeply troubling news. The Devourers had always been dangerous because of their ability to adapt and incorporate new capabilities, but the implications of what the Voyager was describing went far beyond simple technological advancement. If the Devourers had consumed entire galactic civilizations, they would possess not just advanced technology, but also the collective knowledge and experience of countless species. Engineer Santos looked up from her analysis of the latest intelligence data. Reality Shaper has been running projections based on the scout ship capabilities we've observed. The estimates for the main fleet's arrival keep getting shorter. How much shorter? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. 18 months, possibly less, Santos replied grimly. The Devourers appear to have developed some form of enhanced hyperspace travel. They're moving faster than the architects predicted. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders once again. 18 months to complete defensive preparations that had originally been planned for decades. 18 months to unite a galaxy that had been fighting itself for millennia. 18 months to prove that the architects' faith in humanity had been justified. What's the status of the remaining Guardian vessels? He asked. Professor Zhang consulted his displays. 6 of the 7 Guardians are now active and partnered with human operators. The 7th, the Cosmic Forge, remains dormant in the Andromeda Spiral. We've sent 3 expeditions to try to wake it, but so far nothing has worked. The Cosmic Forge was the most powerful of the Guardian vessels, designed specifically to coordinate galactic defense networks and capable of manufacturing architect technology on a massive scale. Its awakening could potentially tip the balance in humanity's favor, but it had proven frustratingly resistant to all activation attempts. The Quantum Sage has a theory about why the Cosmic Forge won't wake up, Jean continued. It believes the final Guardian was designed with additional security protocols that require a specific type of activation trigger. What kind of trigger? Marcus asked. Direct exposure to Devourer technology, Jean replied. The Cosmic Forge was apparently programmed to remain dormant until it detected an actual invasion in progress. The architects wanted to ensure that their most powerful weapon would only activate in response to a genuine threat. Marcus considered the implications of that revelation. It made sense from a security standpoint, but it also meant that humanity would face the initial Devourer assault without their most powerful ally. The timing would have to be perfect to wake the Cosmic Forge early enough to influence the outcome of the war. As they discussed defensive strategies, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The tactical displays immediately shifted to show an incoming priority transmission from Alliance forces in the Outer Rim. Captain Kim activated the communication channel, and the image of a desperate-looking hegemony officer appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Marcus could see the bridge of a warship that was clearly under attack. This is Captain Torres of the HFS Defiant, the officer reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. We're under attack by unknown vessels at the Kepler 442 system. These aren't Devourer scouts. This is something else entirely. The mention of Kepler 442 sent a chill through Marcus. That was the system where he had first discovered the Eternal Voyager, and the asteroid field was now the site of a major Alliance supply depot. What kind of ships are you facing? Captain Kim asked. They look like modified Krillian designs, but the energy signatures are all wrong, Torres replied as his ship shuddered under enemy fire. They're using some kind of biomechanical technology, and their weapons are unlike anything in our databases. Marcus felt a terrible suspicion forming in his mind. Voyager, are you detecting any familiar energy signatures from those attacking ships? The AI was quiet for several long moments before responding. Yes. The biomechanical integration patterns match those used by the Devourers in their assimilation process. It appears that the Krillian species has been partially consumed and converted into Devourer shock troops. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Devourers hadn't just arrived ahead of schedule, they had been working to subvert Alliance members from within. The Krillian raids on Guardian vessels hadn't been simple piracy attempts. They had been intelligence-gathering missions designed to identify targets for Devourer conversion. How many species could they have compromised? Marcus asked. Unknown, the Voyager replied grimly. But the conversion process is extremely efficient. A single Devourer infiltrator could potentially subvert an entire civilization within months. Captain Torres's transmission was suddenly cut off as his ship's communication array was destroyed. The tactical display showed the HFS Defiant's energy signature fading as the vessel was overwhelmed by superior firepower. Marcus made a decision that would reshape the entire Alliance strategy. All Guardian vessels are to converge on Nexus Prime immediately. We're moving to a full war footing as of right now. Over the next few hours, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Devourer assault wasn't limited to the Kepler system. Coordinated attacks were striking Alliance positions throughout the Outer Rim, each one carried out by converted versions of supposedly friendly species. The Zeridian Republic, which had joined the Alliance only months ago, suddenly turned on their human advisors and seized control of 3 Guardian technology installations. The Epsilon Collective, a group of artificial intelligences that had been providing computational support, began broadcasting Devourer propaganda throughout their networks. Even some Thackeray units, despite their apparent loyalty, showed signs of infiltration and subversion. "It's a coordinated campaign," Commander Vexhai reported from her position aboard the Infinite Explorer. "The Devourers have been planning this for months, possibly years. They've identified key Alliance members and systematically compromised them." Marcus looked around the command center, noting the paranoid glances being exchanged between representatives of different species. The Devourer strategy was diabolical in its simplicity. By turning Alliance members against each other, they were destroying the coalition from within while simultaneously gathering intelligence on its capabilities. "We need to assume that any species could be compromised," Marcus announced, making perhaps the most difficult decision of the entire conflict. "Effective immediately, all non-human personnel are restricted from Guardian vessels and critical installations." The announcement caused an immediate uproar among the alien representatives. Several species threatened to withdraw from the Alliance entirely, while others demanded proof of their loyalty. But Marcus held firm. The survival of galactic civilization was more important than diplomatic sensitivities. "This is temporary," he assured them. "Once we develop countermeasures for Devourer infiltration, normal cooperation will resume. But, right now, we can't afford to take any chances." Dr. Rodriguez contacted him privately through a secure channel. "Marcus, there's something else you need to know. The Infinite Explorer has detected unusual energy patterns from within Nexus Prime itself. There might be a Devourer infiltrator already inside our primary facility." Marcus felt his blood run cold. If the Devourers had managed to infiltrate Nexus Prime, they could have access to the entire Guardian network's command structure. Everything the Alliance had built could be compromised. "Lock down all critical systems immediately," Marcus ordered. "And prepare the Guardians for emergency departure. If this facility is compromised, we need to relocate our command structure." The next several hours were among the most tense in Marcus's life. As Alliance security forces swept through Nexus Prime, they discovered evidence of infiltration that went back months. Hidden monitoring devices, sabotage systems, and, most disturbing of all, several alien personnel who showed signs of partial Devourer conversion. But, as the security sweep continued, Marcus began to notice something else. The infiltration attempts had been sophisticated, but they had also been incomplete. The Devourers had gained access to Alliance communications and defensive positions, but they hadn't managed to compromise the Guardian vessels themselves. The Architect security protocols had held, protecting the most critical elements of the defense network. The Guardian's quantum encryption is apparently immune to Devourer infiltration techniques, the Eternal Voyager reported with evident satisfaction. "My creators anticipated this threat and built countermeasures into our core systems." That gave Marcus hope, but it also highlighted the magnitude of the challenge they faced. The Devourers had already proven capable of infiltrating and subverting entire civilizations. The Guardian Alliance would have to fight this war with severely limited trust and cooperation between species. As reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, the true scope of the Devourer strategy became clear. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a systematic campaign to destroy galactic civilization from within. Every alliance, every treaty, every bond of trust between species was being systematically targeted and eliminated. But there was one element the Devourers hadn't anticipated. Humanity itself had proven remarkably resistant to their infiltration techniques. Whether it was due to human psychology, biology, or simply luck, none of the human Guardian operators showed any signs of compromise. "It appears that human neural patterns are incompatible with Devourer assimilation technology," the Voyager explained when Marcus asked about this unexpected advantage. "Your species' particular combination of creativity and stubbornness makes you remarkably difficult to convert." Marcus couldn't help but smile at that assessment. Creativity and stubbornness were indeed defining human characteristics, and it seemed fitting that those same traits that had made humanity so difficult for other species to understand would now prove essential to galactic survival. In that case, Marcus announced to the assembled Guardian operators, "It's time to show the galaxy what humans can do when we're properly motivated." The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and Marcus Chen, a simple salvage operator who had accidentally discovered the greatest treasure in galactic history, found himself commanding the most powerful fleet ever assembled. The architects had chosen humanity to inherit their legacy, and now it was time to prove that their faith had been justified. The Eternal Voyager powered up its weapons systems as it prepared to lead the Guardian fleet into battle. After 10,000 years of waiting, the ancient ship would finally have the chance to complete its mission. And, this time, it would not be fighting alone.